I wanted to share that story with you today because not only does it help us in our appreciation for John McCain and for that stranger in so many ways saved and transformed him, but because of what his story tells us about the power and the goodness of God, the faith, the church. These things, God, faith, and church, have come under quite a bit of scrutiny and justified condemnation lately, as even more unbelievably, horribly unspeakable revelations come about sexual abuses in church leadership in all denominations, and too close of a marriage between church and state in our national corridors of power. That's beyond the general irrelevance that church and God and faith have come to have in our culture. Most Americans feel that growing our faith and developing a deeper relationship with God and becoming a more faithful disciple of Jesus, doing it all in committed, organized community, doesn't have a lot of worth and is pretty boring besides. John McCain's story reminds us that this work really does make a difference, the most important difference in and for us and for the world. Last Tuesday at our church council meeting, we began things by sharing joys and concerns that were on our hearts. And it was so moving that so much of the sharing brought so many of us to tears. As we shared about how church community has been the thing that has gotten some of us through very, very difficult times. As we shared about how our ministry to the homeless has indeed brought some of our homeless out of homelessness and made us ever more aware how difficult it is for those still stuck in that ditch. We heard about how many small children in our community are experiencing such psychological traumas, even at a very young age, because of the troubled families that they come from. How much prayer and perhaps other ways we can tend to the many troubled children in our community. And there were tears offered just because of the way it feels to have the Holy Spirit dancing freely in our being. It reminded me that this work indeed, no matter what anyone else can say, is very powerful and very good, and so necessary that it happens in community. But that power and that transformation and goodness, it doesn't just land in our laps. It doesn't just show up out of midair, even though it is available to all of us at any time. We have to jump into the God zone, as I like to call it, or let ourselves acknowledge that we've landed into it because the situation's beyond our control. It only seems to be when we have nowhere else to turn, or we've let go of those sources of strength that really are superficial and don't really help us, that we are able to access that power and that goodness and that community. Even though it seems like now we have nothing, we know that we have everything. Peace and comfort and strength and wisdom and joy that knows no bound, no matter what we may be going through. And it's never ending. It really is life's greatest miracle, jumping into the God zone. This month we've been invited to go on retreat, a retreat with Jesus, where we've been invited to think about how we may or may not be accepting that insistence that Jesus has on being our bread. Week one, we were invited to set aside something that would give us more space in our bodies, in our time, in our mind, to make room to bring Jesus in and contemplate him and explore him and our relationship with him. Make it more intentional. And then in week two, we were invited to consider how our relationship with Jesus has changed over the years, because it will change. We need not be afraid of the process, just like our relationship with bread changes. We don't need to be afraid of that either. Last week, we got to giggle and be grossed out by Jesus' insistence that we not only taste him, but that we eat his flesh. No, gnaw his flesh and drink his blood. And I know, ew, it still does gooey things to us, doesn't it? But we also came to realize that Jesus wasn't speaking literally, just like when he says, you must be born again. He's not thinking you need to jump out of your mom's womb again, or when he says, I'm the living water, it doesn't mean that you don't have to drink water from our taps anymore, even though in the summer we may want to do that because it's nothing but hot. Something I read. He's speaking metaphorically in that we don't just want to nibble around Jesus' presence and around the edges. We want to bring the whole of his presence, something that we can palpably experience into our hearts and minds and bodies. We want to hear him speaking with us. And we want to acknowledge that he hears us speaking to him. And then we have now week 4, at the end of our retreat, as well as the end of Jesus' sermon on bread. And we hear now not only Jesus' opponents, but also Jesus' disciples resisting his teaching. They're saying, what? This teaching that you're giving is difficult. Who can accept it? It's what the Jewish opponents have been saying, and now his disciples are saying it as well. Are they mistaking and taking it literally and thinking Jesus is insisting on there being cannibals for Christ? Or is it maybe they're resisting the idea of jumping in the God zone, of letting go of everything else to do the dance? Not just sitting on the sidelines, but getting out there and tripping the light fantastic. Being a disciple of Jesus is an ongoing adventure. It's a lot like going to a gym. Everybody's invited to be part of a gym. But unless you go and work out in a bunch of different ways, you're not going to get the results that you want, that you need, that your community perhaps needs, that your world needs. You need to keep at it, and you need to keep pushing yourself and enjoying that journey. That's why I provided, as part of our little retreat handout this week, what I call our expectations for discipleship. And they're on the back of your thing. And these are exercises. We're Methodists, and this is kind of our reduced exercises that John Wesley and I would say are necessary. I may speak so boldly. I think John McCain would say it as well. That these are the exercises that we want to commit to as we grow in our discipleship. We grow in our relationship with Jesus as our bread. 1, we'll worship weekly. We will come to this church to worship. If we can't make it, we'll watch the service on tape, or we'll go wherever we are to worship, or we'll go outside and hike and experience a worshipful experience. We'll do something that gets us in the praise mode, if possible with the community. We will pray daily, at least. Once a year, we'll take a class. Here at the church, we are offering more and more classes all the time, in all different sorts of ways, long-term classes, short-term classes, one-time classes. We want to grow our mind and have a safe place to ask questions. Once a year, we will serve the congregation in some way, do something helping in worship or with one of our ministries here on campus. And once a year, we will serve the congregation, we will serve the greater community through the congregation in some way. We'll be looking out and be out in the community, serving Christ as part of our community. In our giving life, in our financial giving life, we will always be moving towards tithing, towards giving 10% of our income. And we will, last but not least, commit to seeking and finding joy. Because that's what Jesus came here for, is to bring us joyful life. That's what Paul calls for us, to rejoice always. And my personal experience, when we seek joy, we will find it. And what better message can we have for a world that is so fearful and so damaged and so angry, than to be people that seek and find joy and help others seek and find that very real joy as well. There's also a wonderful exercise here that will help you in your walk, just going out in nature. Now that it's cooled off a little bit, it'll be a little easier, even as it cools off more, to go out and let nature speak to you and be in communion with God. It comes to us from wonderful Frank Laubach, who created a game with minutes, which I'm going to preach about some other time, about how we can learn to pray with Jesus on our mind and God on our mind every minute. But this is a really fun, wonderful exercise that I invite you to do as well, so that you may find that you are the disciples that do not say, this is too difficult. Who can really let Jesus be the bread of our lives? No matter what we may be going through. Even as John McCain could find a way to have Jesus be the bread in his life. Not only God, but the people around him, surprising people around him. How can we commit to doing the same? As we come to an end in our retreat, let us just take a moment now to spend one more moment as a community during this retreat to be with Jesus, to close our eyes and breathe in and breathe out one more time, and let Jesus sit next to us. And look at us humbly and lovingly. And share with us